Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts with a woman telling a man at a bus stop she'd like to break up. The man sighs, and looks at the woman, and puts his hand on hers. We learn her name is Kaya. He says they've been through a lot lately, but now the exam is over. She tells him no, saying this is best for them, and that he's been through a lot of hardship through her. So it's best for them to end it here. He grits his teeth saying he sees, asking her how she can break up with him like this. He asks if she even knows why he's been doing all of that. The bus pulls up. She says that she knows he needs more time. She hops on the bus saying that she believes in him. He calls out to her hoping she doesn't go, and calls her name as she rides away. He says if he knew he wouldn't see her for a long time after that, he wouldn't have sent her away like he did. We see the man in his bed, looking at his phone. Wondering when the next upload is, he gets up saying he should stop moping in bed all the time. He hops on his laptop, and starts to browse Steam, while recalling Kaya saying their breakup is for the best. He gets mad, and throws a picture of them and some books to the floor. It cracks the picture, and he explains how 2 years ago he graduated from university. After graduation he did nothing but flaunt his ego and made constant excuses, saying he only needed to pass the civil service exam. But that isn't his dream job, despite not having a strong enough will to chase after it. He would still read books about what he wants to do. Kaya never stopped believing in him, but since he never did anything he's sure she is ashamed. He is surprised to see a game on Steam that's really cheap, and says the girl in the game is pretty, but says it's cliché. It's a typical story where one becomes a princess by marrying a prince, and they just want kids' money. He says that he should just study. When he plays games he feels relieved, but when he thinks about it, it is sad for the main character, always smiling brightly even while suffering. He wonders if she is truly happy. Even if it doesn't look that good, he enjoyed playing Prince Maker. He decides to try this game out, and buys it. The graphics are really well done, and he is surprised, saying it's much better than he thought. But is surprised as his monitor begins to shine brightly, and right before his eyes the scenery changes from that of his bedroom, to the forest from the game. He looks up, and a woman calls out to him, saying Leo look up, it's a kokorin, and they'll have good fortune after seeing one. He doesn't turn, and she calls out to him asking if he can hear her. He trunks in confusion, wondering if she's talking to him. She asks him what's wrong, but he just wonders who she is. She asks if he's playing a joke on her, and all he can think about is that she looks familiar. A status window appears, saying Raising Lena has started. He blurts out the name Lena after reading this, and starts to wonder if he's inside a game right now. She asks him what's wrong, and a window appears saying he's unlocked an achievement, and she has a high affinity for him. It cuts to later, with a crossbow on a table, and him looking in a mirror, still confused. Asking if he's truly inside of the game, or if he's dreaming. He hears footsteps, and turns to see the door open, and Lena says she wants to go pick berries. He says again, while she pushes him. We learn that Lena and Leo are childhood friends. And that his body remembers the time he spent with her. Outside Lena is picking berries, saying letter by letter, not sure what it means. Leo says he's learned a lot from her, and the area they live in is called Nemo's Heart. It's the border territory of Gaiden, inside of the Kingdom of Orn. It's a world where one's injuries can be healed by priests, and that is what Lena wishes to become. He looks at her sadly, and she asks him why he's making that expression. He tells her it's nothing. He thinks to himself he needs to make her a princess. That's the purpose of the game, it's the end game goal. But he wonders how he is meant to make her a princess, when he's in a place where there's not even a lord, yet alone a prince. He angrily picks berries, saying that he needs to find a prince first. She sees his behavioral change, and looks like she wants to say something. Later in the day, she is looking out a window, saying it looks like it's going to rain, so she might want to work indoors. Her father asks if she's going to eat, and she says she ate earlier, and will be going to work soon. Her mother says she should take it easy. Her father says he agrees since she's been out all week, saying she doesn't have to go to the store, right? She freezes up, and her lip begins to quiver. But she smiles anyway, saying it's okay, she'll just go sit and listen. She heads over to the store, telling a woman named on that she's here. Lena starts to tie her hair up, asking if the dough has been kneaded yet. She puts on an apron, and begins to knead the dough, saying that Leo has been acting strange. He's not usually talkative, but these days he's barely even speaking or smiling. She says it's like he's lost in thought, always spacing out. She looks down at her hands and wonders when they stopped holding hands. She wonders if it's when she said she wanted to be a priest, since priests can't get married. She says they were so much closer when they were younger. She goes to leave with a basket full of bread, and a guy calls out to her, asking if she's done with her work. She wonders why he's always here when she goes to leave. He says he'll walk her home. She awkwardly thanks him. While they walk, she says that she only goes to church on weekends to study to become a priest, and the rest of her time is spent working. She starts to pray, asking for the god Shenamur if she can truly become a priest for them. She walks ahead of the man who calls out to her. She tells him she'll be going ahead, and she just thinks about how much she missed Leo. It jumps back to him and he's sighing, saying he's been here for a month now. At first he hoped it was a dream, but now his memories are distant echoes. He wonders if there's even a point in returning, when all he has to look forward to is preparing for a boring exam. He wonders if just living here is the better choice. He hears someone inside his house and jolts up, to see a hand opening his bedroom door. And a hooded man stands before him, and stares at him. Leo wonders who he is, but slowly starts to realize the man is Leo's father. His father says he didn't know he was home, and to follow him. Sometime later, his father is praying, saying he wants to offer his prey to Lord Barbathos, and hopes he accepts it and protects his family. Leo wonders if he's a hunter, and the father tells him to drain the animal. Leo is surprised, asking why he needs to do it. His father turns and glares at him, and Leo tries to cover it up by saying it's been so long he forgot how. The father gets close to him, and Leo wonders if he's noticed, but he walks away. Leo sighs out of relief. Then the father says first you tie a rope around its legs. Leo does so and is surprised by himself, since his body clearly remembers how to do it. His father sighs, thinking he's strange today. Then Lena appears. Leo asks her why she's here, and she asks him to spend some time with her today. He asks if she means right now, and she says yes, she wants to forage for mushrooms. He sees his father hanging the animal, and tells her sure they can go. As they head out into the woods, they sit down. But she isn't saying anything, and he wonders if everything is okay. Then she asks him if he remembers, 10 years ago, the day the priest treated her father. And how that made her want to become a priest to help others. She looks exhausted, saying she's afraid, and doesn't want to do it. Leo asks her what's wrong, and she says she wants to continue living like this, spending time with him. He begins to blush, and she asks if he wants her to become a priest, or would he rather she didn't. He truthfully doesn't want her to go, but thinks it's best that she does. He says he was hoping to find her when he returned from the mountains. He says Leo has liked her for a long time. She asks him why he wanted to see her, in a teasing manner. She then reaches out to his hand, and puts hers atop his, and this be looking a bit too romantic to put on YouTube. That night they are heading back to town, and Leo says that it's odd. He says he feels quite uneasy for some reason. The priest Leslie approaches them, saying he's sure this is what Namer wants. Not sure who that is. Leslie says the priests here want to take her to the cathedral. Both of them are surprised. Lena asks why the priest wants her. The woman says that the monk was praising her, and they are going to the monastery, asking if she wants to join them, and they can recommend her as a priest trainee. Leo watches this, saying he didn't think she'd be able to leave the village, but still finds the situation uneasy. If it's a monastery, there will be a castle where the king lives, and there will be a prince too. So she might even meet said prince, but he starts to feel conflicted emotions, and says since she'd be in training, she might not get to meet anyone. He gave up on making her a princess a long time ago, but with her leaving maybe this game life would come to an end. He doesn't want to go back to being Minseo yet. Lena is excited, asking if he heard the priest. He forces a smile, thinking she would be happier here, but doesn't want to say it. She can tell that he's forcing himself, and grabs his hand. Which surprises Leo, and she tells the priest that she would like to stay here. Father Leslie tells her that this is a rare opportunity to be baptized. Leo says she definitely mentioned it before. To gain divine power, someone with divine power has to instill it into another person. This is called a baptism. When performing one, more than half of one's own divine power evaporates, so they only pick those with outstanding talent. Leo doesn't want her to see the expression he's making, and Leslie says it looks like this is a crossroads to determine if she'll become a priest with divine power, or a monk without. The important thing is that she dedicates her heart to God, so surely she'll think about it more. She looks troubled, and the female priest says they'll be leaving early tomorrow morning, if she changes her mind to come find her by tomorrow morning. Then she and the man walk off, leaving Lena and Leo standing there, Leo deep in thought. Lena calls out to him, saying she isn't going. That she is happy here with him, and that's enough for her. Leo starts to feel guilty for holding her back, since he wants to live a comfortable life, and hugs her, even though he understands he is being selfish. He tells her he'll make her happy for the rest of her life, and that he will absolutely make sure she doesn't regret her decision. She hugs him back saying she won't. That night Leo is explaining to his father that he is planning to marry Lena at the end of the fall harvest. His father just drinks his beer, and Leo wonders why he isn't saying anything, but understands he's a man of few words. His father slams his tankard to the table, and stands up walking to the shelf behind him, throwing a bag at Leo, saying it's the money he's saved up from selling jerky and leather, and to use it for his wedding funds. Leo goes to ask him since when, but sees his father drinking and decides to just accept it, and smiles warmly at him. It cuts to the end of fall, with a bell ringing. We see Leo standing at the altar while Lena begins to walk down the aisle, while holding a bouquet of flowers. Everyone tells her how pretty she looks. Leslie tells her he has a gift for her, and she feels sorry for turning his offer down, but he doesn't mind it and hands her a book. Saying that he hopes God is always with her, she begins to cry, and he does too. Asking her why she is. Leo is happy, and she tells Leslie she is grateful. Leo calls her name, stretching his hand out, and she puts her worn-out hand on his. The priest then begins to commence their wedding ceremony, saying to bless the path for these two. Everyone begins to clap. The priest then says he now wants to announce the birth of this couple to God. Lena jumps at him saying she loves him, and he goes to say it back. But the world begins to distort, saying Lena got married, and she pauses in the air. Her and everyone else begin to fade out. Leaving him in an empty room with nothing but his tears, he lets out an anguished scream calling for Lena. As a message appears, thanking him for playing the game, and we see Lena in her wedding outfit in the sky above him, as he changes from Leo back to Minseo. He's unlocked the childhood friend demo, and learned that Leo and Lena both lived happily and had a son and daughter together. Minseo wonders what the hell is going on, saying that he is Leo. There's no way that this is some game, wondering who is manipulating his life like this. He tells her that he misses her, while chasing after the portrait. Only for it to disappear, leaving him with darkness, and it suddenly hits him. He starts to recall Kaya and tears begin to flow, as he says he loves Kaya, but remembers Lena and begins to feel his stomach twist. He says he has to get out of here now, but wonders how. A message appears, saying he's failed to clear the game. Even though they lived happily ever after, the goal wasn't reached. But due to Leo becoming a hunter, some of his hunting ability will be inherited, and it's time for new game plus. His heart sinks upon seeing this, and he screams saying this is bullshit, but his screams are in vain, as he begins to float into nothingness, his consciousness fading out. He screams no. He is brought to a snowy mountain, and slowly opens his eyes as he looks around, and then hears his name being called. He starts to feel happy, wondering if he's back to being Leo, and he calls out to Lena, and she says she said his name first, asking why is he staring so hard. Asking if he wants to get hit. Leo's head begins to hurt and he wonders why he is acting as Leo again. He looks down at his hand, and gets smacked on the head by Lena. He looks up at her, and she asks him why he's been spacing out. He says it's Lena, but not the one that he knows, and looks around seeing that it's not even the same town, and that this is a whole different experience from the first. In the game called Prince Maker, you could choose your father's occupation, one of them being a retired knight. The starting points change depending on the occupation you choose. The current Leo lives in the Aston Kingdom, one of the 7 kingdoms on the continent. Feudalism and the tribal system coexist here, with the tribal chief and lord governing the castle together. The Lena Einar in this scenario is the daughter of D. Horman, the great warrior of the Einar tribe. And this Leo is Leo Dexter, is the eldest son of a renowned knight family. Although the situation is entirely different from the previous one, the only consolation is that it's in the same world and same continent. He is one country over from Demo's village. He says it proved that it isn't a ruined game with a shattered worldview, and the capital of the Holy Kingdom is quite far away. Lena enters, asking where Leo is. He quickly puts the books back on the shelf. Asking why she is here, she says he's been strange recently, asking why he is obsessed with books. He says he's thinking of going on a trip, and he was wondering what he would do if he didn't become a knight. Lena says that isn't an option, as they will both definitely become knights. Then she grabs his hand, saying it's time to go train. This scenario's Lena is hella focused on being a knight. We see them in the training area. Leo charges in with an attack, but she blocks it. But realizes it's heavier than she thought, so creates distance. Leo gets his ankle hit by a sword, as his father yells at him asking what he's doing with his feet, saying he's doing useless things. He keeps hitting him, saying to lock in and get it together. He drops his practice sword, saying that's enough for the day. Lena squats beside Leo, asking what's wrong with him today. Asking why he's being beaten up alone. She points out how he didn't do his specialty today, and demonstrates it. He quickly does it perfectly, saying it's like this, and she is just even more confused now why he didn't do it earlier. That night at Lena's family dinner, her father is walking to Leo's asking what he means by his son swinging the sword strangely. He says it's as if he's completely forgotten how to swing it. Lena's dad laughs, saying it's only natural to want to swing it around as you please occasionally. And tells Leo's dad that he's making his future son-in-law lose heart, handing Leo a drink. Leo is confused and says pardon. Lena's mother tells her hubby to chill and asks Leo to go find Lena. He says okay, and thinks about the son-in-law comment. And he wonders how he's meant to make her a princess when they've already decided to get married. He grits his teeth, wondering if the game is meant to even be cleared. Saying he'll just end up marrying her again, seeing the same stupid ending. He doesn't want to keep repeating this life. He just needs to return to the real world, as he is Kaya. He sees a drunk Lena, asking what she's doing here. He goes to ask her something, but stop himself, saying that he can't get attached to her. He needs to be mean to her and break off the engagement. The moment he made up his mind to do it. He was asked by her mother to take Lena to her room. He can't believe this. He tells her to get a grip, and she starts to get close, saying that he's been strange lately, and they should drink more beer and talk. He begins to blush, hopefully this stays YouTube friendly. He sees her lips glistening, and grabs her by the hand, and throws her onto the bed. Thankfully, he just says she's drunk too much and she should go to sleep. He closes her door, leaving her flushed just laying on the bed. The next morning we see her running in the snow, looking excited. Everyone tells her she's being too relaxed, and she says she can't help it, she overslept. She says this is all because of Leo, suddenly doing things he never did before. She couldn't sleep at all due to it. The usual Leo never refused a request, her kind and boring, and well-mannered night. But now it's different, the connection of his sword has become unusual. It used to be heavy strikes with no openings, these days it's like he's saying he'll give you the bone and take your head, no damn clue what she means. She says it isn't knightly at all. But she doesn't think it's bad. She spots him, asking what he's doing here. He says he thought he'd die if he got hit anymore. She laughs, asking if he was getting beaten up by uncle again, saying she likes how he is now too. He begins to blush at her smile, and she tells the rest that her and her husband will be heading out first. She wraps around his arm, and he says she doesn't seem to care about the incident last night and sighs. She asks if something is wrong, saying she'll teach him everything, so just follow along. He can't help but catch some feelings. She begins to laugh while looking at him, and he asks himself if he can truly make her marry another man. It cuts to Leo walking through the woods, and looks down, spotting some marks. Telling the rest where the tracks lead, saying it's over there. We see a shadowy figure, and it turns out to be a boar. It begins to charge at the group. The two in the front both strike towards the boar, absolutely mogging this thing. We see it full of spears, laying on the floor in front of the group. It's actually pretty chonky. Lena's dad starts to laugh, saying his son-in-law is excellent. Noel sucks at hunting, but his son is great. Lena asks him if he's ever hunted, and why he's so good at it. He tries to think of an excuse. He says it's been a few weeks since the year passed, and they became of age. They ended up joining a party led by D. Horman. Thanks to the hunting basics he learned from the last scenario, so it wasn't difficult to adjust. Lena says it's time for her to shine. They start to walk off, and get told not to stray too far. While walking through the forest, Leo sees some pretty flowers. He calls out to Lena, then hits her in the face with a snowball, catching her off guard. She starts to get embarrassed, saying that he's so dead, but he laughs. Until she pegs him in the head with one back, telling him to try and do it again. Then throws one, saying to dodge this. He blocks them with his arm. He tells her to wait, and we see him defeated on the floor. She asks if he surrenders, stretching her hand out, and he says yes, taking it. The mood starts to turn pretty nice for them both, then she drops him, causing him to fall into the snow. She asks him what's the deal with these. As we see giant tracks leading off a cliff. She says something must be down there. He tells her to hold on a minute. He says that the tracks are going downward, yet there's little trace of weight. So it's either an animal who has a smaller body proportional to its clown feet, or it's a very dangerous animal. She said it'd be better to go and check it out. He says it could be dangerous, so it'd be better to go and report it first. He says it won't be too late for them to come back with people. She's surprised, but says you're right and there's nothing wrong with being cautious. Later on, Leo says it was a good choice, as the thing that awaited them was a mythy fox, something that seemed more like a magical beast than an actual human. We see her father about to swing, and Leo says it was strong for its size. It surely would have killed the two of them. Her dad cuts off the fox's arm, and tells the rest to attack while it's weakened. They begin to charge in, and the fox lets out a cry as it dies. They all go wild, and cheer. Leo wonders why he and Lena found it first, saying that it must have been an event. But just what was the point of it? Later on, the snow is beginning to melt away, while they are all sitting in an office. D. Horman is looking at a paper, and Noel asks him what's the deal. D. Horman says that the kingdom of Aston declared war on Velita. Noel says the royal family has always coveted Velita's fertile land. D. Horman says that the Holy Kingdom declared that they wouldn't participate in the war, and they'll need to get troops from Fort Avril. Noel says that's absurd, saying he's being dragged to the southwest border regardless, saying they could have lived their lives as is. Why are they being forced into war? Leo wonders what will happen to Lena, and D. Horman looks sad, saying that Lena is going to take part in this war. Leo is surprised, and Lena looks afraid, but she smiles brightly saying of course she's the daughter of a warlord, so she'll be needed. She says it's great and that Leo's experience in the war will help him on his path to knighthood. Her mother starts to cry, and Lena says it's alright, this is the right thing to do as a warrior. She says she knows, but Leo says that he remembered the time when they went hunting. During the fox event, what if Lena got injured while dealing with the fox? She wouldn't have been able to participate in the war. But just because he knew about it beforehand, wouldn't have made him choose a different option. We see her family warmly holding each other. Leo is angry saying is there really no choice but to see her leave for war. Later, we see Noel reading a book and Leo calls out to him, saying that he too plans to join the war. He will join Lena since he wants to become a knight. Noel slams the book, saying he refuses to allow it. Leo says his body's swordsmanship is far from stable. No, rather he's become more short-sighted than before. Noel says him going to war right now is suicide. Leo says that isn't the case. Noel yells at him, asking why he thinks he knows what is going to happen during war. Leo tries to calm him down, but Noel says that if he continues to spout nonsense he is going to break his legs. And if he understands then to get out. Leo tries to say but Lena is in the war, but Noel forces him out and starts to look frustrated while sitting down. Leo looks like he's made his mind up about joining. Later, Leo says his father wasn't kidding about breaking his legs. We see him get thrown across the study, and Noel is beating his legs asking if he thought he'd not find out about the secret application. Leo grunts from the beating, and walks away with a limp. His eyes tired, he says he couldn't find any other way. We see everyone laughing and having a good time, but he had no choice but to wait for the day of deployment. The day right before, we see Lena training. Leo tells her that he'd like to have a match with her, and takes his stance, while looking determined. She puts her real sword down and snickers, while picking up a practice sword, telling him to be careful, as she is in peak condition right now. They both ready their swords, they shift into their stances. He starts to charge in. She blocks his sword, then twists her wrist, making him lose his balance. She goes in to take advantage of this, but he blocks the attack. Then knocks the sword back, causing her to stagger a bit. He thrusts forward, trying to take advantage of it, but she avoids and prepares a counterattack. He matches her sword yet again, and she says that he's improved. He tells her he wasn't just idly standing by. They both create their distance from each other. He goes on the offensive, pushing her backwards with each attack. She goes back in for an attack, and he quickly blocks it. But she sees an opening with his feet, and trip him over by kicking his legs. He hits his head on the ground, and she points the sword at him, saying his bizarre sword technique has a while to go before it's complete. But she looks really happy. He on the other hand isn't happy. He's angry at himself that it ended so quickly. She tells him to train diligently, and after the war she'll face him again. He lets out a scream that startles her, and then we see that he's pushed her over and he tells her that he knows it very well. She is surprised and confused, but sees that he looks really sad. She smiles and calls him stupid, while putting her hand on his face. She puts her hands around him saying she'll return safely, so just keep practicing, and pulls him in for a kiss. I like this, Lena. Leo starts to hold back his tears and accepts the fact he is attached. Later on, inside of a bedroom, we see his clothes on the floor, and he reaches over but Lena isn't in the bed anymore. He quickly gets dressed and runs out of the room calling for her, only to find her eating with her dad. Now they are left with awkward silence. D-Horman starts to laugh, saying they are messing around as an unmarried couple, asking if he wants him to smash her legs. Lena sighs, saying it'd be unfair to break the legs of someone going to war. Lena tells him to join them with breakfast. Later in the day, everyone is preparing to depart for war. Lena's mother tells her to take care, and D-Horman laughs, telling her to kill them all. She tells her father to remain healthy. He lets out a sigh while Noel comforts him. Lena walks up to Leo, and they both look at each other. She tells him she'll be back later, but he cuts her off with a giant hug, telling her to please stay safe, and not to get hurt. She tells him not to worry, and she'll return as a knight. The troops start to beat their drums, and a man blows a horn, sending off their troops to war. Everyone watches. Leo's eyes full of regret, as they leave the gate. Sometime later we see Leo did nothing but desperately swing his sword. He was acknowledged by his father, and he plans to pursue Lena. But after the seasons changed, and the flowers bloomed, he was absolutely devastated. He drops his sword, as the world begins to distort out around him. As a notification says that Lena has died. We see her portrait showing her in the battle. The golden light surrounds his solemn figure, greeted with a message thanking him for playing the game. Leo grips his chest full of anger. It shows both of their jobs and marital status, and how she died an honorable death. He fades back to Minseo, and wonders if it was all in vain. He reads more, saying how Lena died against a girl named Katrina. And how Leo eventually died protecting the castle, and never got married. Minseo falls to the floor, saying that he's so pathetic for being unable to do anything. Minseo wonders if Leo died early because he couldn't live with a shame, or without Lena. He starts to feel the urge to vomit, and covers his mouth. He failed to clear, but it wasn't futile, as he has inherited Leo's swordsmanship. Minseo looks hopeful, saying maybe the next time will be better with his hunting and swordsmanship skills. He wonders if he can make a goal where he has so many skills he can just crush everything. Yet again he is restarted, in an unfamiliar environment. This time in a younger boy, in an alleyway somewhere in the slums. He starts to feel uneasy. We hear a voice call out to him, and calls him brother. He looks down to see a malnourished Lena, saying that she is hungry. He says this Leo is different compared to the others, but he wonders why this Leo left Lena in such a miserable state. She says, brother, I am thirsty. He realizes they are siblings this time, and says she is in a horrible state. And if she stays like this she'll die. We see the bustling city street. And he says this time they are leaving as beggars. He exits the alley, to see a stall of food, and begins to go crazy with hunger. The stall owner sees him, and says he doesn't want to see a beggar. And begins to walk forward with a bat in his hand, and tells him to leave while he is being nice. Leo says he wasn't trying to steal, and the man tells him to get lost. Leo asks if he can please give him some food, and he will repay him. The man starts to swing his bat, saying to get lost. He goes to hit Leo, who says if he leaves he and Lena will both die. But the man realizes he was about to accept the hit, and finds it impressive. Leo asks if they can just hand him parts that aren't suitable, such as the heads or feet. The guy says that if he does then he'll get chewed out for raising beggars. Leo says he knows it's unreasonable to be a beggar, and he apologizes, but they are about to starve to death. He has a sister to feed. The man sighs, telling him to wait there. Then we see them both eating scraps. Leo sighs out of relief, saying they filled their stomachs somehow, but it'd be nice to have water to drink. It's a large city, so there should be a river nearby. He asks Lena if she knows where one is, and looks lost as hell. He says she must have no idea, then spots a puddle on the street, saying that if they drink this liquid ass, they'd definitely get sick. He looks at his necklace, wondering what it is. He sees that Lena has one like this too, and says it must be important. She calls out to him, saying it's time to go home since it's getting dark. He finds it weird they have no food or water, but they have a home. He asks her to guide him, and she smiles warmly at him, saying that she'll show him. We see behind a building, there is a grody looking hut. He wonders why they are living in a place like this. If the property owner knew of this they'd kick them out. She tells him to quickly come in. She says that she is tired. And she'll sleep first. He tells her she needs to wash before sleeping at least. He says it breaks his heart to see her like this, but he doesn't know anything, but realizes something. She looks up at him, and she asks him what's wrong. He says it's nothing, and they should sleep now. She lays down, and he says he thought he could manage things somehow, even though this scenario is hard from the start. It's unlike the other ones in which the dynamics between them don't impact her marriage, which is a huge advantage for him, and since she is younger than the other Lenas by 2 years. He thought it'd be great to create a good foundation for him this time. He says she's too pretty, and that in a world where slavery is officially sanctioned, beautiful beggars are the best products for slave traders. Knowing this he's been hiding her in this place while smearing dirt on her to keep her safe. In that case, it made sense that Lena didn't know where the water was. It's likely that Leo of this world had been the one fetching water for them both. And that their necklaces must be related to their lineage. Anyone who has played games would know that it's a really common cliché. The secret of one's birth and their striking appearance. The plotline where Lena defeats her enemies, reclaiming her rightful place on the throne's succession. This is the one with the clearest ending. It's a story that focuses on the latter half of the story. He says if only he were stronger and falls asleep. We see when they were younger, and they were playing hide and seek, he found her behind a curtain and lifted her into the air. It was Lena thinking about their past. He says she's up quite early today. She tells him she woke up earlier, and he asks if she drank water. She says yes, and the other one is his. He says she didn't even drink half of it. He tells her to drink more, and she says it's his and she doesn't want to, but he tells her it was originally hers. She eventually agrees, then begins to drink it. He says she must be hungry, and they should go now. We see them sitting on the side of the street, and Leo says he realizes it was the capital of Velita, called Orville. It is who Aston was at war with, which causes Lena to die. Back when different races ruled the continent, there was an empire that drove out the other races, calling it the Age of Humans. The empire was called Archaea. Afterwards the empire split into 7 kingdoms. Among them Velita was the one who inherited the empire's legacy the most. As the country is a wealthy one, everyone has a greedy and fierce disposition. He looks over to see her laying on the floor, and begins to feel worried. He quickly asks if she is okay. She looks up saying that she feels dizzy. He says her fever is high, and she has red spots all over. He tells her to wait a minute, he needs to find where the hospital is before coming back. He runs from building to building, in hopes he would find the hospital. But says he can't find it. He starts asking random people on the street, but nobody will give him the time of day. Until someone tells him it's right around the corner. An older lady says if he turns and runs to the end he'll reach it. He starts to carry Lena, saying he is way too thin and weak for this. She says she had another dream. He tells her to wait as they are almost there. He finally makes it, and heads inside to see a man looking at him with disgust. He tells Leo if he doesn't have money to pay not to enter. The man grabs onto his arm, and throws him and Lena to the floor. He quickly makes sure she is okay, and pleads with the man, saying that he's never met Lena before, but he'll pay him back somehow. He kicks him out, asking what he's talking about. Then kicks him in the face, causing his family heirloom to fly up, giving him an idea. He says then to please take this, and it seems valuable. So please, take it, the man says to get lost before he counts to 3. Knocking the amulet out of his hands. The man begins to count, and Leo is deep in thought. As he gets to 3, a woman says if it's only about money she'll give him enough for both, so just take them inside. The man stops in his tracks, and looks over at the woman before agreeing to what she's offered. The woman asks Leo if he's okay, and he immediately thanks her. He goes to thank her again but falls unconscious. He wakes up with his eye bandaged, and jolts up, wondering where Lena is. He calls out to her, and the woman from earlier is heard, telling him to come here. He enters the room to see her laying on the bed, and the woman says she's received treatment. Leo asks if she'll be okay. The woman says that they don't know shit, and are quacks who rely on priests. He asks her what that means. She says that she's received her medicine, and the doctor says it happened because she ate something she found on the street. She tells Leo she could have done the examination herself. He asks her what he should do now. She says to just wait. He suggests he find a priest, but she says it may seem simple but the cure for this would be really expensive, and she can't afford it. He thanks her for her help, and she says she did it because she wanted to, and to stay here until he gets better, as there are no questions coming anyways. He tells her to wait, since he hasn't gotten her name yet. She is surprised, and he says he doesn't know what to call her. She says that her name is Cassia. He can just call her that. Later he starts to check on her fever, asking how she got so sick. Saying it can't be the chicken, as he didn't get sick. And that he gave Lena the cleaner pieces anyways. He wonders if this is just an event and it was predetermined that she gets sick. But it makes no sense, considering it wouldn't be strange if she died right away. Maybe it's a forced event to meet Cassia, but that seems too severe for an event. Even if this is the highest difficulty, having her start off with a serious illness in this scenario is impossible. He starts to bite his thumb, saying he needs to think about it differently. Lena said she was thirsty from the start, and she barely drank any water despite being thirsty. But then he has an idea, saying maybe while he was getting food she drank the doo-doo water. He starts to tear up, saying he shouldn't have left her alone. He starts to feel heavy regret, praying that she survives. She sees him crying, and he asks how she's feeling. She says she had a dream. He tells her to drink some water. She says he was laughing in her dream. He tells her to just quickly drink the damn water. He puts it to her mouth, and some of it starts to fall out. He says if she just sleeps tonight she might be better tomorrow. He tells her she should quickly drink, but her arm falls limp. Fear and panic begin to set in, and he is quickly left with pure remorse. As she has died, he realizes that he probably caused this. The window appears thanking him for playing again, and we see Lena in a coffin. The golden light begins to pour on him again. We learn their family names are de Uriel. Lena died young. But Leo became a shoemaker, and had a wife named Senya. After her death, he began to live with Cassia, and that's when he met and married Senya, but he never had children. Minseo starts to curse at himself, saying he is such a stupid fool. He recalls Lena's final moments. And how he isn't fit for happiness. He couldn't protect her due to poverty, so he'll start the scenarios with initial funds from now on. He finds this a pathetic consolation for having her die. And a window appears saying restarting again. We hear a familiar voice saying to look at the Kokorin, and that it's good luck to see them. He's back to being Leo the hunter. He calls out to her surprised, and she asks what's wrong. He looks extremely happy, and while they are walking he says he can still feel the events from yesterday. And that he needs to start over with Lena from the beginning this time. But perhaps it's for the best, as he cannot mentally handle the repetition. And it's unfair to Lena too. She sees him dragging his pace, asking what is wrong. He tells her it's nothing, saying he's low-key glad she can't remember the previous attempt. Or else it'd be hard for her to leave Demo's village. Right now he needs to decide on the choice to make. He could either let her follow the priests who come to visit later, and allow her to become a priestess, or she doesn't go and they end up marrying one another. He sighs, saying he doesn't know how to end this. And it is driving him crazy. He looks down to see a pouch full of money. And says it must be the initial funds from the consolation prize. He shakes his head regretting it again. But decides it's good, since they could make it to the capital of the Orun Kingdom, or even the Conrad Kingdom. The church event happens around autumn, so he needs to leave the village by then. Before cooking up his plan, he talked to his father trying to get his approval. His father says his hunting skills have improved a lot. Leo gulps down his food, reaching for his waistband, saying he has something to tell him. He says he was able to catch a bear in a trap, and he earned this money from that. His father asks if he caught the bear alone. He says it wasn't easy, but it was injured by a previous trap, so he lured it to another. His father nods in approval, since Leo showed his hunting skills today. He tells him he wants to help Lena go to the capital church, and with their family situation it's impossible. With this money they can head to Neas first, and head to Lutetia from there, but he can't send Lena alone. Asking his father if he can go with him, the father starts to walk away and Leo wonders if he can't overlook such a wild suggestion. Even without permission he'd go anyway. But again his father just throws him a bag of money. Leo looks down at the money and his father continues like normal. Leo feels happy since his father is so wholesome, and genuinely thanks him. The next day, Lena and Leo are picking mushrooms and he says it's exactly the same as last time too. In a bit she will want to talk to him about something. On cue, she says the words, but he cuts her off saying he has to say something. She is caught off guard, and he suggests them heading to Neas together. She asks why, and he says that it's just because he wants to visit the capital. And there's many places to work there. She says she thought he wanted to be a hunter. He says it can always be done, and that it's closer to the Holy Kingdom. Since it's the capital, wouldn't there be many merchants traveling to Lutetia, and the main church is there? She says sure, but asks how they'll get there, as it would take 2 months and that's dangerous. He shows her money, saying they can use this. She gasps, asking where he got this from, asking if it's from his father. He tells her some of it, but the rest is his. And it would be lonely to go alone, so he asks if she'll go with him. She seems stunlocked and mutters out her response, before crying tears of joy saying she can't wait to travel with him, and thanks him. He starts catching even more feelings, saying this should work. Even if it wasn't with him, It's fated for her to leave anyway. They embrace one another and we see back in their village. People pulling wagons. Someone tells Leo he doesn't need to do it just because they are leaving. He says it isn't a big deal, and explains how a cart is sent to the capital twice a month from their village. It departs with goods to sell at the market, and returns with necessities. Coincidentally, on the day he and Lena were leaving, they decided to follow it. Freckles, no clue if it said his name. But the jealous guy stares at Lena. That night when they set up camp, Lena and Leo bid them all farewell. She says they can just stay here, but Leo says nah, they need to sleep comfortably. And it's what he's been saving for. She tries to convince him otherwise, but he tells her not to worry. And they keep walking, but Freckles trails from behind. And looks annoyed. It cuts to a tavern, and a man showing them their room. He tells them to let him know before they leave tomorrow. Leo says alright, and he'll see him tomorrow, but Lena is pogging out over the beds. She can't stop spinning around saying it's so nice. Saying they should sleep on the floor since they can't afford this. He says it was cheap, and she says if he tries anything strange she won't let him off easily. He says he understands, but says that she's acting quite cute. That night while they are in their beds, Lena says she's tired, but cannot sleep. She sits up and looks over at Leo who is sleeping, and thanks him for taking her along with him, saying she almost gave up. She hears him grunting, and asks if he's okay, realizing he is having a nightmare. To be honest, if they hadn't gone on this trip she was going to confess her feelings to him. She looks happy staring at him. She starts to put her hair behind her ear while leaning forward. Saying maybe they could have been lovers, while giving him a kiss. She quickly opens her eyes, realizing what she's just done and apologizes to her God for doing that. She lets out a quick sigh since he's still asleep, and gets back into bed, saying she's sorry again. And when she becomes a priest, she'll give him her first blessing. In the morning, he goes to her bed to wake her up. She asks him if he slept well. He says yes, and he's already washed up. But he left a towel and water for her to wash up too. And tells her they'll eat here before heading out, so leave her luggage in the room. She says okay, and he heads out too. Some of the villagers who set up ask if he slept well. He waves to them, and sees Freckles. Saying he must have slept here. He isn't the brightest. We learn his name is Hans, and Leo asks if he sold everything. He says yes, they sold quickly. He asks him if he's eaten yet. Leo says no and he's going to eat in a bit. Hans says he'll join him. Leo says sure, he guesses it's fine. Since he has no reason to refuse it anyways, he's heard rumors that Hans isn't working. And is just mooching, but he recalls how he lived as Minseo. Saying he can't really judge him. Hans says he has a question for him, then asks him in a menacing tone if he slept with Lena. Leo stops walking, saying this was his real reason for tailing along. He wonders what the real Leo would have done, and tells him he just fell asleep. Hans laughs at him, asking if he's okay mentally. Leo goes to clap back, but Lena appears. Leo asks if she's ready, and she says yes, asking if Hans is joining them. He says sure, and they'll go eat together. Hans says if they are going to the King Castle, they are heading in the wrong direction. They need to go much longer if they keep going the way they plan. Leo says there's no choice. If they were with a caravan it'd be fine, but they aren't. Hans mocks him saying he is clueless, and if there is a market there are caravans, and there's quite a few of them heading west from here. He asks Leo if he should introduce him to them. Leo is surprised, asking if he knows anyone. Hans smugly says he is good at this. Leo asks if they can leave today, and Hans says they'll find out if they go ask. So just follow him. As they do, Hans waves to someone who recognizes him. The man asks Hans if his goods sold well. He says yeah, but quickly introduces him to Lena and Leo. Asking if he can take them to Neas. The man says they aren't going to Neas, but they will be getting close. They happily say sure. The man says it's a 2-week journey, and he'll have to lose goods to take the two of them, saying it's 5 silvers. Hans asks the man to cut it in half for them, saying they don't have much. The man says sure, and he'll see them later. The man heads out, and Leo thanks Hans, saying he's saved him money and time. Hans says that Lena deserves to be comfortable. She thanks him, saying her opinion of him has changed. Hans laughs, saying they don't need to thank him. That night they are heading out in the caravan, leaning against one another. Leo says this is never ending. Lena then says that once they arrive they'll need to work for a year, right? He says yes, and thinks about how he's lied to her. Even if they worked for several years it would be hard to save enough money for the trip to Lutetia. And they aren't going to the holy city, since she's meant to be a princess not a priestess. from the moment he decided to go on this trip. She's been isolated in Neas because of him. She asks what kind of work she should do. And he suggests she work in a bakery. As Han's aunt was full of praise for her, she says she can only make dough. He tells her they pay a lot in the capital. He recalls how she was meant to meet the priests and head to the capital church. But he will make her into a princess, like she deserves. After a long boring ride, they reach the little area before heading to Neas. Before leaving, he put Lena to bed and went to a blacksmith. We see the buff muscle woman asking why he wants a sword, and if he has a permit. If this is a man, I am cooked. He says he doesn't, asking if he can get one without it. He has someone to protect, asking if she can let it slide just this once. The blacksmith glares at him, asking if he's a gangster or something. Leo says no, he isn't. The woman asks what's with the tattoo then, asking if it's his clan's tattoo. Leo says his father did it, and he has the same one. The blacksmith asks what his father does, and he tells him that he is a hunter. The blacksmith says if he really isn't a local gangster, then to follow her to the back. We see swords hanging up above the fire pit, and she tells Leo to go ahead and pick one. Leo asks if there are any two-handed ones, and the blacksmith is happy, saying he really isn't a gangster then. Leo says he's told her multiple times no. She says it's hard to believe. He looks down at the swords, and picks one up, asking if they are all unbalanced. She laughs, saying she actually only knows how to make shields, and they were made for fun. She was going to melt them, so she'll sell him one for cheap. He says he'll take it, and sighs, saying at least he got one. He has swordsmanship skills, so he can still use it. He heads back with barrel in tow. Lena asks him where he went, and he smacks the barrel, saying to get beer. They never got to drink at the village. She asks if it's okay. Saying they'll get in trouble, he asks from who. She says that Vinar might get angry. He smiles at her innocent response. Saying that priests also drink during ceremonies, she says that is true. He says to think of it as practice for later, as she'll be a priest one day. So Vinar will understand. And that she'll be of age in a few months. He tells her to just try a little. Instead, she just starts straight chugging it. And looks relieved, saying that it tasted amazing. But says that drinking it is making her dizzy. He says that's part of the charm. He says if she gets drunk, he can dig into her past. He asks if she remembers the summer before last. She says yes. He got in trouble for bringing a cocorn back. He says yeah, and she asks if he remembers saving her, saying he was so cool back then. Then she asks if he remembers when he accidentally rang the church bell, making the villagers think it was a fire. She says they have so many fun memories together. He says the more he learns, the more he's beginning to feel like the real Leo. And it would be better to accept it the way it is. She asks why he is being so nice to her, asking what his plan is. She looks happy, and asks what he plans to do when she becomes a priest. He picks her up, saying she can bless him at least. She asks him what he's doing, and puts her on the bed and puts a blanket on her. He says putting a wall between them is good for her. She starts to doze off, and he says he should drink with her occasionally. They finally make it to Neas, and enter a tavern. The man says his friend runs it, so he'll treat them nicely. The man says it's been a while, and he almost forgot his face since it's been so long. Hat Man tells the tavern keeper to provide them a room. He says he has a room for two, but there are more guests than expected, so there's not enough for all of the merchants. Asking what he wants to do about that. Hat Man says to at least give his travel companions a discount for his sake. Tavern Keep asks if they plan to stay for long. Leo replies, saying he might with a discount. But for now, just one night. Tavern Keep says alright, and he'll show them a nice room. Then he turns to Hat Man, smiling sinisterly, saying he'll get what he promised him last time. They head to the room, and Lena is happy with it. She says it's much better than their last room, but we see the roses are wilted, showing it's not cleaned regularly. Tavern Keep says he's only showing them this since his friend asked, and it's just 3 silver coins. Leo asks if he heard that right, and the man asks if it's too expensive. Leo says nah, this is fine. The Tavern Keep says he'll be going for now. Lena says that this place is really cheap, but also really nice. Leo says yeah, it's affordable since it's on the outskirts. She asks if they'll stay here for a while. He says yes. Unless it's far from their work. She opens the window, saying even the view is amazing. Hat Man yells up, saying he'll see her next time, and she waves while thanking him. Lena says he's a kind person, and wonders if they'll meet him again. Leo says if they are meant to, then yes. They head back to the town center, and Lena is really enjoying the view of the castle. Leo says it looks really similar to the beggar sibling scenario. Then they see a giant crowd forming in front of them. Turns out that it is a slave auction, specifically barbarians. The realization sinks in of what is transpiring. Leo says there are many barbarian tribes in the unexplored land. In the winter scenario it's the same for the Ainer tribe. They are treated as barbarians by everyone else, which means in the winter scenario there are only a few princes that Lena can meet. Only the princes from the Aster or the Holy Kingdom would be worth approaching. Lena asks him if they can leave, saying that she can't bear to watch this. He apologizes and they leave. He says they may find a place to work inside of the castle. A guard spots something and calls out to Leo, who is confused. He points to his sword. Another guard comes up, saying it doesn't appear to be a knight's sword, asking if he's a hired mercenary. Leo freezes up, saying that he isn't, and they ask why he's trying to enter the castle with such a weapon, saying to at least hide it. He says he's sorry, he didn't know it wasn't allowed. He just got here today and is looking for a job. One of them asks to see it, and Leo hands it to him. He asks where he got it. Leo says he bought it for self-defense on the way here. The guard instantly can tell that it is defective. The other one says he wants to see it too, saying the weight is concentrated at the tip of the blade. Leo asks if he's okay to keep it with him. They say yeah, since it's such as quality. But bringing weapons into the castle is prohibited, so leave it elsewhere before entering. Leo thanks him, then they spot his tattoo. Asking if he's a gangster, he says no and that it's what his father did. Lena covers for him, saying he's had it since he was a young boy. The other guard is suspicious. But Buddy says that there's no way an idiot gangster would walk up with a sword that's so poorly made. Seems like there's a lot of gangsters in this town. Leo sighs as they are told they can leave, and Lena asks why he has a sword when he can't even swing it properly. She teases him, saying it's defective too, and she was a fool to be touched that he claimed to protect her with it. He says he knows how to use a sword, and she laughs, calling him a silly hunter. Outside of the bakery, Leo overhears the girl inside talking to Lena, saying she'd be happy to have someone help with the dough. Asking if she can come in tomorrow, Lena smiles and says yes. Leo asks her if it went well, and she says yes. He asks her what the pay is like, and she says she'll decide after seeing her work tomorrow. Lena laughs, saying she has an eye for people, and that the baker lady seems nice. Leo says she must be like Han's aunt, which makes Lena embarrassed for some reason. It jumps to Leo hammering something. Honestly not sure what this is, leave a comment if you do. The shop owner asks if he has experience with this, and Leo says he just helped his father occasionally. The man asks when he can start, saying he can pay him generously. Leo says he'll think about it as they keep walking through the town. Lena asks if they'll be going back to the same tavern. Leo says he guesses so. He says now that he's shown Lena how to get a job he can start finding clues on the prince. He chooses a spot far from her bakery, and if he just shows her his father's money, saying it's a salary, she'll probably not find out. She spots something as they enter the tavern, saying the door frame is very worn out. He says it was like this when he first came to, and maybe they cut out the rotten wood after it was rained on. They enter the tavern to see a lot of men inside of it. The owner says he's been waiting for him. Leo says they'll head up to rest, but finds the atmosphere strange, as everyone inside of the tavern has weapons. They are greeted with a bald giant and a tower shield atop the stairs. Leo realizes shit is about to hit the fan, and draws his sword, telling Lena to stay behind him. She is confused why he's drawing his sword. Then everyone else stands up, weapon in hand. Leo tells the men that he's not sure what's going on, but to step back. They say for someone who is going to be sold soon, he sure talks a lot. The realization suddenly sits in about why they all look familiar. One of them go to attack, but Leo blocks the hit, and the guy says not bad. Leo realizes they are strong. One of them tells his subordinate not to kill Leo. The attacker comes in for round 2. Leo pushes Lena away and dodges the attack. He creates distance, but they corner him. He stabs one of the men in the chest, while the other runs at him. He avoids the attack, and counters by kicking the man in the chest. The mercenaries realize he's actually putting up a fight, saying this isn't what was agreed on. The man asks the tavern keeper why he said that Leo was a hunter from a rural village. He says he heard it from the merchants. They put tower shields up and get into formation. Leo says the situation is worsening by the minute. He hits their shield wall, knocking the men to the floor, and tells Lena now is their chance to run, but a flying dagger comes in, piercing his leg. He drops to his knees, and pulls it out, gushing blood everywhere. Lena tells him to run, while Baldo stands behind him. He smacks Leo on the back of the head, and Lena lets out a blood-curdling scream. If you've watched till the end, comment, Civ, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.